I greet you from Oslo in Norway, where we were having it's obviously it's a wintry time. The winter isn't that harsh as it usually is, but definitely winter. And I am so I'm Håkon Krogh, head of engineering at Crystallize, and we figured that why not do a talk on how to do a conference website on Jamstack, right? It really fits the theme of this conference, I think. Now using Next.js and Crystallize. So let me get started. You might be thinking, why a conference website? Sounds like a narrow concept. But there's a lot of stuff that goes into a conference website that can apply to a lot of other different websites. So if you're looking to build a new website today, conference or not, I think there's going to be a lot of tips and tricks within this that you can use and apply to other areas too. Now, that being said, we have our own motivation for doing a conference website at Crystallize. That's because we're doing our own conferences, specifically on React. So that's not as broad as a Jamstack conference as is today, but we have a React Day New York and a React Day Norway conference. We like to tailor make things for the web, which is why we made the website for these conferences from scratch every time. And last time we did, not just did we do it from scratch, we did it on a stream as well. So this is the video recording from last summer, where we, during 2 sessions, I believe, created the React Norway website. And now that included a live stream showing off how we did the concept, how we designed it. So we designed it within the stream and then implemented it later and finally deployed it live. So very fun to do, lots of cool sharing, lots of cool comments that we got back from that. And it's live on YouTube if you wanna see it. I can share the link later. As that was fun doing, and the end result was really nice, as well, at least I think it was, nice looking. There's some, there's things that you cannot, there's things you just can't complete within a limited time frame, starting from scratch. So we did a lighthouse score after we deployed and all, realizing that we didn't sort of meet the ultimate scores for Lighthouse. And for those of you who doesn't know Lighthouse, it's a measurement tool from Google that can audit your web page and give you some scores from 0 to 100, 0 being the worst, 100 being the best, on different categories. And for these particular 3, we would like to score 100, like a perfect score, which we were just unable to do in a short time with the websites. The same story goes for the other conference that we did, React Day New York online, and the design ended up really nice. I like the hot dog on the subway here, but we were not able to fulfill the perfect score here either. So we decided, because we're doing the conferences again this year, we've been doing them since 2019 and we want to do them every year. So we figure we're going to make a whole lot of conference websites in the future. So why not make a Jamstack conference boilerplate? So yeah, that's what we did. When I say we, that's in fact a bit of a lie, because our designer, Laura, she made a design. My colleague that actually did the front end and the back end for it. And I just taking all the credit. I didn't really do much. Anyways, the boilerplate, I'm going to show it real soon. The boilerplate's purpose is really just to get you off to a flying start, right? So you don't have to sort of do all that boring work of setting up a project, creating the data source and all that, just gives you a baseline, a really good one. So you can just go ahead and create the content that you want and make it look like your brand, your conference, and make it beautiful. So goal number 1 for the boilerplate was to make it nice looking. And it's deployed today on a URL. So it's available now. I'm going to switch tabs. It's here. If you go to conference.superfast.shop, you can do that during my talk. You can browse around and see the actual deployed version of the boilerplate. It sports quite a neutral but still nice looking design, in my opinion, which can be easily tuned and themed to your purpose. So we intend to use this for our conferences. This is the baseline, apply our own flavor to it, and that should be easy enough to do. So it features stuff like, a hero on top. There's sponsorings, some general content in the middle here, and some speakers and a schedule at the end. Job boards and conference pictures from before as well. There's stuff here. And the boilerplate comes with a set of features from the get-go that we think is relevant for most conferences. Schedule, speakers, it's a job board, and to round it off, it's a ticket and merch shop too. You probably want to sell stuff. Well, if you want to sell stuff, let me put it that way. If you want to sell stuff, then this boilerplate gives you that opportunity. The boilerplate comes with a set of data where you can, sell some physical stuff as well as the actual admission to the conference itself. Now, the JamDAV, this conference here, is free, but maybe if this was a physical conference, still free, you might want to limit the amount of people that could come, because maybe the venue took so and so many, right? Then you can control that with the stock options for products that we have. Anyway, let me get going. So these are the base features. I want the boilerplate also to be dynamic, to have a dynamic and multilingual content, specifically dynamic, which means I don't want like the source of data here to be marked down or other static assets, because you would like to, at least me personally, I like to change content on the fly. So let's say that I build a website and I go for a trip, right? And on the bus, I realize, oh, I need to change that thing. It's easy to do that on the fly with a dynamic source, which is why we're powering this with Crystallize. If this was markdown files and controlled by the repo, it makes for a bit of a more difficult journey to control the content. So all of the content here is being fed by Crystallize. I'm going to show a bit more of this later, just a sneak peek. But the idea is really just you have a place to store the data and the images and everything, really. And you can just control it from there. And of course, another goal, equally important as the rest here, is to show some more love to users. And that means the boilerplate, after some good work from our side, from Daria, the boilerplate now supports a perfect score out of the box for accessibility and best practices in SEO. Stuff like schema tags as well, to mark up the speakers and their creative artwork and all that. That should be part of the boilerplate. Stuff like that is often overlooked, so especially looking from our own experiences, but typically it's easy to forget. We also wanted the developer experience to be top-notch, so which is why we built it in Next. And for those of you who know, that is an excellent way to enable a lot of cool developer tools. It's very, very friendly framework. It's fully written in Typescript. You get all that love from types. And another bonus is that you're getting the GraphQL queries typed, which is not always the case. Even though you have Typescript, you need an additional step here to get you those GraphQL queries typed. It helps you massively when talking to external services, like the boilerplate is doing. I'm going to show off that later too. We're using Stiches for the visuals here. For those of you who doesn't know, it is a similar to motion and style components, this is a way to control the CSS that goes out. It comes with a design system that has a storybook too. So you can, if you want to, grow this in size and distribute a design system based on your conference boilerplate if you want to. And of course, this being a Next.js project, it's easy to host on Notify and Vercel and all of the other places where Next.js apply, which is, yeah, a lot of places. All right. Yeah, show me the code now, yeah? So I'm going to take you through how to set up a new boilerplate. I'm sorry, a new website based on the boilerplate. And I'm going to show a bit of the code, how things are being pulled, like the data sources being pulled, how you can theme it to match your styles. And if we have time in the end, I'll show you how to deploy this thing and get this live. So in order to get started, you need to have Node install on your machine and then run this command on screen here. You'll be greeted by this little prompt here where you would need to select a boilerplate of your choice, in which case what you want to have is the Next.js conference website boilerplate. There's a few other ones too. This is the one you want. It's going to ask you if you want to bootstrap a tenant in Crystallize with example data. And it's probably a good idea to say, yeah, I would like that, because this boilerplate here is tailor-made to work with tenants that have been set up with all that stuff like speakers and schedule and all of that stuff. So it's a good idea to just say, yeah, to that option, and you will get a tenant with all that data bootstrapped. And it's just a matter of deleting it if you don't want it afterwards. All right. So I chose to do that. I just did this just half an hour before the talk. So I bootstrapped a new tenant for myself in Crystallize. I called it my awesome conference. I'm going to show you a bit how the code looks once you bootstrap a new project. Let me just do another share here. All right, code coming up, beware. Okay, cool. So this is how it looks. Let me zoom in a bit. So the boilerplate comes with two projects. There's a front end and there's a back end. Now, I'm going to go, we could go into details on why it's two projects, because in theory, it could just be one. Now, the front end and the back end do different things, of course, and you only need the back end if you want to do a shop. If you don't want to do a shop, don't worry about that. All you need is a website. And the website, for those of you familiar with Next.js, will recognize and feel right at home here. Let me just show you how the front page, for instance, is being set up. Oh, nice. Let's scroll down here as well. Perfect. So as you can see here, we tried to be good with naming. So every section should feel intuitive, sort of, right? So there's a hero on the top. I'm sure if you remember the boilerplate. There's a hero here, and there's some sponsor section, front page, body, and there's speakers and so on and so forth. So this is being rendered based on the data that comes from Crystallize. I'm going to show you quickly how that looks like. So as you can see here, there's obviously, files are in TSX indicating TypeScript. And indeed, you can see that on, the type declarations here. So the get static props hook, which Next.js provides, is now fully typed with the actual props that are being pulled from Crystallize based on a query that you did. So this is the typed query that I talked about. Now, if you check out the source here, you'll find that it's really daunting and feels weird. Now that you're not supposed to be looking much at these. The point is really to look at the actual GraphQL query that happens in behind. And for those of you who doesn't know GraphQL, don't worry. It's something that you can easily learn. And we have, from our side at least, we have a bunch of articles showing you how to compose queries. And for those of you who haven't seen Crystallize, don't worry about this stuff. It looks weird maybe and very unfamiliar and scary. Don't worry about it. This is just the way that you can pull data out. So this is just, pulling a title, description, hero, CTA, and so on and so forth. We're not going to look much at this. I just wanted to show you. And this is essentially how you pull it in. It renders nice. I'm gonna actually switch screen sharing again. I can show you as well. You can navigate into the website. I do yarn dev. Open this up in the local one. Let's just do that real quick. There we go. So that would be a local here. So let's just see if this is even working. I should be expecting to see, yeah, exactly the same as the deployed version. Cool. So at this point, you're ready maybe to do your own theming maybe. So what we can do, maybe we'll do that later. Actually, what I wanted to show you, since I'm already in Chrome, is I want to show you the data source that's backing this. So earlier, when I told you about the CLI and it chose the boilerplate and it was asking you if you wanted to bootstrap data, if you said yeah to that question, you would get a tenant like I have here, an awesome conference that looks like this. I'm going to zoom in. Let's see, it's a bit, can I zoom in? I can do this. Right, it has a front page. And you can see, you can recognize these images and the text. So if you wanna change this to your own flavor, awesome conference here, change the titles, you just publish your changes and that is reflected immediately locally. Just reload and you see the title is already changed. This goes for everything down here. So the sponsors you see here are defined as, here we go, just referencing some organizations that you would define in Crystallize. And if there's things within this interface you don't get because you're new to Crystallize, don't worry about it. It's not an issue at this point at all. This is not the video where we're going to talk about that and explain everything. So let me go down to speakers, for instance. Here you see we got some speakers here. So for instance, I don't know, Pedro was not attending anyways. We could remove him. Just publish that. And you see Pedro should be there. Yeah, Pedro's there. Reloading this page should make him go away. And gone he is. That's really how the data has been pulled. And having this dynamic source as the truth of your data is really powerful in a lot of different ways. But for me, the selling point is that you can always change this on the fly, regardless of where you are. You can also delegate this to other people. Say, hey, please, can you change this content for me at this page, please? And you don't have to know anything about code or Git or whatnot to make any changes. I find that really, really helpful. So that's how that content is being pulled. If you go to the merch section and see the products, for instance, the tickets, you see there's some early bird and there's regular tickets available here. So if I go back here and go to merch and check out the ticket, I can raise the price or I can lower the price for the conference, kind of slice it. So it's really cheap now. And I'm going to up the amount of tickets that I have because I have a large venue. It's going to be a physical conference. So doing so will obviously then change the prices here. Now, if you did configure a backend, oh, there we go. Fantastic, buy ticket. Then you can also do a checkout. And this is using Stripe for payments. I haven't tested this locally, so I'm not sure if it's going to work right now because I haven't done the backend yet, but that's a thing we can you can all try out here on the boilerplate itself, the one that's been deployed. But essentially, that's the way that the content has been set up. So everything that you see on page here is pulled from Crystallize, apart from obviously a few minor things in the front end, which I'd like to show you now. Let me see, new share, we'll do back to code. So how am I on time, by the way? I forgot to start my timer. 14.5 minutes I can get. Perfect. So I'm going way faster than I expected, of course. Cool. Right. So this is, again, the front page. As I mentioned, there's a design system embedded in the boilerplate, which you can find here. So let's go ahead here and change some stuff. Let's make some adjustments to the boilerplate to make some visual things happen. And I have to warn you, I'm not a visual person. So there might be some designers, some people with a visual eye that will cringe here and say, oh, it's bad. And yeah, it probably will be. So there's a theme folder and it's a colors, and I like that. We can probably change the primary color, and I want my conference to be really cool. So I'm going to do a really badass color. Yeah, something like that. If I save, I'm curious to see what happens. I'm gonna have to do, not sure what happens. I haven't actually tried this one. I really don't know what happens when I do. Nothing happened. Oh well. There we go. Things that I have not been tested. Anyways, go back to code, and essentially all of the things you see on code is something you can change here. I didn't prepare a cheat sheet of pre-made, colors and what would work here, so I'm not going to touch more of this. But essentially, that's how you can tune everything. And if you go back to the front page, I wanted to show you a bit about how things are being composed here. So for those of you who have not used Stiches before, you might find this way of writing the CSS a bit awkward. It's it's inline styling from the looks of it, and it's referencing weird names, right? But these are referencing variables within your design system, and it's really powerful. So for instance, this one here, BP3 is a reference to a media query, so you don't have to write it out by hand every time. Essentially, where can I find that? Here we go. So BP3 means a max width of 1024 pixels. And I just love having that shorthand so that I don't have to write media queries from scratch every time. I never remember how to do that. In fact, I don't. It's hard. So just doing BP3 like this, oh, it makes so much sense. And you can see our padding is 0 and then $4. And that means $4, it's a size. And sizes are defined, where are sizes now? From spacing. There it is. Are defined here. So $4 would be 1 RM. So again, you're typically not operating in pixels here, but you're just referring to variables that are already designed. And this is really powerful because it helps you compose a really consistent and clean setup. So there's not going to be a whole lot of mixed values for spacing and for sizes and all that. It's going to be really, really strict all the way to the end. So this might be a little, a bit of a hurdle for people, like a learning step. But from our experience, when we've tried out this boilerplate on people, it's not that big of a hurdle, and you get so much benefit, so much speed once you get over that initial learning. So it's a really nice addition, if you ask me. Right, cool. I also wanted to show you how. Oh, I forgot to mention that. Essentially, how I connect this boilerplate to my tenant. So I skipped that part. There's an env file that comes coupled with a project. And in here, you define your tenant specifically, Crystallize. So this will pull the tenant in and reference that one and use that for everything. So if I go back to Chrome, reset, there we go. This is what makes this title change from the one that's being live, which is this one. It's cool. All right. So let's say that you got your boilerplate or your website configured and you want to deploy this somewhere, right? I suggest you do one of the bigger hosting platforms. This is a Next.js project, so it's only natural that we would try out Vercel first. So the steps to do that is, first off, to kick off a new Git repository. I've done so. Not this one. I've got this one here. I'm gonna go my own. I did a personal project just now. It was done 36 minutes ago. And this is the boilerplate as you saw in my VS Code, just pushed here, both the front end and back end, as you can see. And then the steps to take here to deploy this is essentially go into, if you want to do this on Vercel, it's creating a new project on Vercel and hook that into your, connect it with your GitHub and select the repo. And you need to do one project for the website and then another one for the backend if you want that. And that gives me, as you can see here, it's being deployed in an awesome conference at Vercel.app, which is a URL that's available for all of you all watching this talk. And as you can see here, it's already available. And yeah, and obviously the builds are, and this is a 1 minute build thing. So it's really, really fast, and having this on Vercel coupled with GitHub gives you all those benefits of, branches and individual deployments per branch commit. So it's really easy to do iterations on designs or, whatnot that you might have. Cool. So I think since I have a bit of more time, I want to see if I can go through with a purchase. In fact, I want to do that since I haven't checked out my own one. I want to just do the one on the boilerplate itself. What happens? What happens when you pay for a ticket or an admission? This is Stripe in test mode. You can just do 444, or sorry, 4242 all the way, and that should be good. And this is gonna create a payment on Stripe, and it's gonna also create an order in Crystallize. So if you go here, I'm gonna select the tenant that this order comes in, and you'll see here, this order just came in now. This is the local time for me, so it's the right time. And you can see here that I bought the intergalactic ticket for 345 USD. So coupling a conference website with a project, like a service like Crystallize, gives you the possibility not just to do rich storytelling like we're doing here. Like it's a fully fledged CMS that's powering, as well as a proper e-commerce platform. So you can you can do order intake like we're doing right now, and record all the tickets being sold, all the potential customers on your conference, and you can do this to, there's plenty of opportunities here, and I could talk a lot about the details of what the possibilities of what you can do. But something that I think is also worth mentioning is once you've got something like this set up, let's just see here. As I mentioned in the beginning, speed sites. We wanted to give you a flying start with the boilerplate. So I wanted to end with a live audit of my newly deployed website, which I have no idea how it's performing. Well, I have a hunch, but I haven't actually done an analysis on it beforehand. And as we can see here, my performance is so-so. This is pretty much something that has to do with a runtime JavaScript framework like Next.js. And the only penalty we get is indeed there's some stuff around video loading and stuff, but the framework also typically takes its toll here. So we've done a couple of videos in the past of how to do performance optimizations on a Next.js website. I'm not going into details about that right now, but it's definitely possible to do. If you want to run the previous audit that I did, I'm going to go here. So if you want to do stuff like check out the accessibility, SEO, and all that, it's a good idea to open your DevTools in Chrome, click on Lighthouse, and check the things you would like to test. So we did performance right now using PageSpeed Insight, so we can do best practices, accessibility, and SEO, and we could do them for mobile. I assume, well, I don't know how the split is, but going to be plenty of people using their cell phones too on this website. This takes about a half a minute or so to run, and we're getting. I was hoping for 100 all the way around. Anyways, we're getting close to it. Seems like something slipped through our cracks. One thing. Anyways, that's something we will resolve, believe me. But the scores we got are pretty good. If you look aside from that, which is really nice for me. So if this was my conference, it's really easy for me now to tune this and to apply my own branding, my own stuff on top, and to run a really cool conference, but without spending a lot of time and effort on the basics of the website. So yes, I think I am through. So thank you for tuning in. And if there's any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Håkon. That was really, really interesting. I think, having built my own conference website, I think this would have been a huge help for me had I had it available to me, or known about it anyway. But yeah, it looks really, really cool. We did have a few audience questions. I have a few questions of my own, so we'll start the chat here. And I suggest to anybody in the audience, if you still have questions, feel free to just ask them now, and we'll get to them. So getting to the audience questions first, one user asked, so obviously you're using Crystallize both as the CMS and as the e-commerce solution, it looks like, for this particular site. Can you, if you wanted to hook a different CMS instead of Crystallize there, and then use Crystallize for the shopping cart and stuff like that, you can do that?
Definitely, yes. Yeah. You do compose your own stack for anything, which is what we also built Crystallize to do. So it's totally possible to run your own CMS, your different brand, and alongside Crystallize, and only use that for instance, order intake and product information and stuff like that. Totally possible. The power of Jamstack, I suppose.
That's true. Yeah, that is one of the benefits, right? So another question was, does Crystallize offer cart functionality similar to Snipcart?
Not currently though, but it's totally something that we're looking into as one of the things we're gonna potentially add in the future. Although you can totally do carts today, which at least in the sense that most people would like it. So the example that I showed you, the boilerplate comes with a client-side cart that can talk to Crystallize and validate cart on the server using the backend that we ship with it. So it's yes. So the real answer actually is yes, you can do that. I mean, and you can do your own version of it.
So this is basically Crystallize offers like an API-based function, e-commerce functionality, and like I mean, Snipcart is kind of like your drop-in cart functionality. So this is like a, okay, that makes sense. So you can build the cart, you just have to do the implementation details yourself. Like in terms of like the UI. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And you just to mention this, you can also use Snipcart alongside. That works also fine. Possible to do that. So possibilities are endless actually on that area.
Excellent. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I think this question was actually answered in the chat, but I'll ask you as well. So it said the usage of CSS variables are native to CSS. Thus, the CSS in JS for the Stiches isn't obligatory, right?
No, exactly. So you can mix and match here, and I am a huge fan of CSS variables. It is truly a lifesaver in many projects. The boilerplate comes with a different kind. Essentially, the user, like the developer experience, is closely the same, although I prefer not having to write var and then colon and then dash and so on every time. So it makes for a bit of a speedier development flow with Stiches the way we set it up.
Okay.
But yes, generally CSS variables for the win. Yeah.
And is this kind of like your typical setup of Stiches, or I'd actually, until you presented it here, never even heard of Stiches before. So like, what would be your kind of rundown of what Stiches does for you as a library?
Well, Stiches is a library that is truly wonderful for composing design systems, as well as for having a really tiny runtime on a website. So compared to solutions like style components and emotion, Stiches typically have a lower footprint on the client side. Although I'm not entirely sure of the latest benchmarks for the latest versions, but that is also one of the choices why we chose Stiches over styled components or emotion or CSS modules for that matter. So so it's that sort of good balance between developer speed and customer sort of user and performance, client performance.
Okay, that makes sense. I'll have to check that library out because I had not heard of it. So granted, my CSS skills are limited to say the least. So I'm curious, in terms of like how you chose to architect this application. First of all, what made you specifically choose Next.js for it? Is it like, what is it? Can you tell us like what decisions you made, like in terms of that led you to choose Next.js?
There are a lot of great options today for websites like that. Next.js is simply the one that is being most used currently, and that most people would be familiar with. So we decided, since we went with Stiches, which is a fairly unknown library, we figured, well, let's go with Next.js at least. So that's not new. So we could have done this in Gatsby. It would pretty much be the same. Totally possible to do. You can do this in 11T. You would have to do some backend stuff as well, and you can do this in a lot of frameworks. Obviously, it doesn't really matter. in Crystallize, we try to have boilerplates for the most popular frameworks. The idea is that you choose whichever framework that you're comfortable with, and you run with that.
Right. That makes sense. It does seem like Next.js is kind of hits the broadest number of people already familiar with it. So at this point, and is there anything you talked a little bit about some of the stuff performance things you could do to improve a Next.js site? Is there anything you can share now that, I mean, to me, that's I think a hot topic right now. It's what can we do to make this the site perform better?
Right. Okay. So there are many things you can do. So one drastic option that we've been doing some live streams on is simply to turn off all runtime JavaScript. Remove it all. Now, that's a really drastic step, and not for everybody. So Next.js 12 introduced, or was it? Yeah. Introduced a beta version of the server components, which is very helpful for reducing client-side, like the framework runtime. There are parts of Crystallize that are heavy on the client side, which are like stuff like videos that could be lazy loaded. There's also like all of the rich text in Crystallize comes in a really structured AST, so it's a bit of work for the browser to chew through all that and render it on screen. So that could be a potential for a server component, which could help the client side rendering. So those are the typical things I would look into if I were to optimize the performance even more.
Okay, and so I'm curious: are you server rendering all the pages on this particular site, or is it kind of building and pre-rendering a lot of it?
Yeah, most of this is just pre-rendering. I think all of the pages except for checkout are statically generated with incremental static regeneration as an advantage option, for if you host this on Vercel. So it's all pre-built and then rebuilt every time a user visits the page.
So you have them all pre-built, but you're using the incremental static regeneration on all the pages, or this is on just like the product pages, or?
I think it's on all the pages. Remember, there's not a lot of pages in the boilerplate. It's front page, and there's the individual product pages, and that's pretty much it. And then there's checkout, but checkout is individual tailored anyways. It's all client side.
Okay, and the incremental static regeneration you're using so like if I make a change, we don't have to rebuild the whole thing and send it up, or is that what you're using it for?
Exactly. So if you make a change to a product, let's say that you update the price of a product, and you would like that to affect as quickly as possible, then you will get that help with the incremental static regeneration. Man, it's so long.
Okay.
So yes, essentially you wouldn't wait for the whole site to rebuild. It will just be that one product page.
Yep. Okay. And just as a note for the audience, like you can actually get that across other platforms, like so they just don't call it the same thing. Yeah. So like Netlify calls it deferred static generation, or deferred. Oh my God, DPR. So it's not something else. So too many acronyms, honestly. Distributed persistent rendering. It's Gatsby that calls it deferred static generation, and this is why I don't like to use any of those terms. So we got one more audience question. Are there any plugins available to source crystallized data into Gatsby?
Right. Yeah. We have a boilerplate for Gatsby, and so you can bootstrap that today if you want to. There's a different tenant, different setup. It's not for the conference, but it's a more like a traditional e-commerce setup. So it's not using a specific source plugin, which I know the question was about, but we have that on the radar. And so keep your eyes open, because it will probably be something that we will realize quite soon.
Okay. So at this point, it's just calling the API. It's not a plugin they can add to their existing site.
No, it's not, but it will be. So we're using the source GraphQL right now, I think, plugin, just extending that, and then, but yes, its own source plugin would definitely be on the list.
Yeah, and I agree with Sean and Ray and all. Yes, too many acronyms to remember at this point. I'm trying to have to it's well, and all those acronyms refer to basically the same thing with slight differences between their implementations. You know, I just call it deferred rendering, and it's just much easier for me.
Yeah, I guess this is the stuff that makes web dev so hard today. It's got a lot of cool tools and frameworks and all that, but just a whole lot of acronyms.
Yeah, we love to throw new terms out there all the time, don't we? Yeah. I mean, granted, I guess Jamstack would be one of those terms, but which I'm a fan of that. You know, sometimes some terms are great, sometimes some terms are confusing. So, well, thank you, Håkon. This was a really great presentation. I think hopefully some folks will actually take that and go build another Jamstack event. I mean, I'm happy we're running this one, and Netlify has theirs, and Vercel has theirs. But like, I think more community events like this would be great. Or I assume it doesn't have to be Jamstack; it could be any kind of conference. So yeah, that'd be great. I hope folks go and do that.